Listen to this podcast now
on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Idea Gen Global Podcast with George Sifakis.
I'm George Sifakis. In a world overflowing with noise, there is one forum where the world's smartest voices connect, where visionaries sit at the same table as innovators, and great minds don't just talk, they act.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC and stations throughout the country. So thank you so much for tuning in. It is the theme of this show this weekend is Baby It's Cold Outside, because where I am in Washington, D.C., we're getting ready for Snowmageddon. And I think if you're in New York and most of the places in the South and Northeast, we're going to get hammered with a snowstorm. By the way, I was out this morning, spent about 2 hours, went for a long walk, and it's very invigorating to be outside when it's cold. You know, and by the way, doctors will tell you that being cold for a few minutes or even a half an hour a day actually is good for you. So get out before the snow hits and enjoy this winter weekend. We've got a great show lined up, folks. We have Senator Bill Hagerty is going to be with us. He's one of the top senators in America and one of the best in terms of what's going on with our economy. We'll also be talking to financier par excellence David Bahnsen and Jay Jackson, who is a regular on our show, about how to live longer. So a lot to talk about on the show, and thank you again for carving out some time to listen to the show. We have great ratings, and it's because people like you. We will be taking your calls, by the way, in a little while. I want to hear from you on a whole bunch of issues. What did you think of Donald Trump's speech at Davos? He took a couple of victory laps and well deserved. The latest numbers on the U.S. economy show us growing at well over 5%, closer to 5.5%. That comes on the heels of a third quarter number, which was 4.5%, and second quarter, which was 3.5%. I like the way that the economy is moving constantly into a higher gear. So that is fantastic. I think this is a blockbuster economy. I think it's only going to get better. But one of the things when I start taking your calls in about 10 minutes, I want to ask you about, by the way, to that More Money hotline number is 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222, or 1-800-848-WABC. And I want to hear from you because there was a big debate this week on the Senate floor and in the committees about the future of healthcare in this country. And healthcare costs are out of control. They've almost almost tripled since we passed the so-called Affordable Care Act. I wonder how you would rate, how do you rate the quality of care, and do you think you're getting your money's worth in terms of the healthcare system in America? I say hell no. I think we could, Moore's theory is that we could get better health care in this country at half the cost if we would just get the government the hell out of the way. Government has so mucked up the healthcare system. And, you know, you look at what Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all of these people, they told us that if we only passed Obamacare, we'd get the best quality of care, we'd see the costs falling, and it would become affordable. And it is exactly the opposite. So as we look at what's happening with this U.S. economy right now, we're seeing prices of most things falling, except the two areas where prices are rising are healthcare and education. And those are the two areas of government that are most regulated and most controlled by government. So there's something wrong when we have the government come in and take a bigger role. And for New Yorkers, because I know our flagship channel is WABC, for those who you live in New York, how in the world is Mandami going to lower prices? I mean, he's going to, I believe what you're going to see is a huge escalation of prices, whether it's housing, whether it's food prices, whether it's medical prices, they're all going to rise because Mandami is going to give this stuff away for free. And if you give the stuff away for free, the cost for everybody, somebody has to pay for it, right? I think you all know that there is no free lunch. And so, I'm very concerned about our big cities, New York and what's happening in Minneapolis and what's happening in my home city of Chicago. You've got failed policies, failed leaders who are coming up with policies that we know don't work. We know that rent control doesn't work. We know that government ownership of grocery stores is a stupid idea. We know high tax rates just chase people out of cities, and yet that's exactly what we're seeing these politicians do. Couple of things we're going to cover, and if you want to call in, please do. We've got a couple of lines open, 1-800-848-9222. But here's one for you. How about, do you think we should allow colleges to go bankrupt? Because there was a report that came out earlier this week that said 20 to 25% of colleges may go bankrupt. For a lot of reasons. One is that the school age population, college age population is declining after a big hump that we saw a few years ago. And then you have a lot of people just say, hey, college isn't worth it. It's just, why should I pay $200,000 for a degree when I could start my life with $200,000 and build a business or get a skill that employers really need? And then, of course, half of Americans are just pissed off, as they should be, about the left-wing direction of our universities. And the wokeism has turned a lot of people off, deservedly so. And so 20 to 25% of colleges may go out of business, including a college I grew up nearby when I was young. DePaul University in Chicago is in big trouble. A lot of the private schools are in trouble. Now, the public schools aren't in trouble because the government just keeps feeding them more tax dollars. But I got to tell you, I think that this is a real crisis time for colleges and universities. And if they don't start getting back to practical education and then not indoctrination, the whole idea of indoctrination, we don't want that. So, folks, when we come back, we'll be taking your questions, and then later in the hour, I'll be listening to Jay Jackson. He's back by popular demand because every time I have him on, people are just fascinated with his advice about how you can live a longer life and how you can actually manipulate your financial accounts to make sure that you have as much money as you need when you grow older. I just turned 65. I'm about to turn 66. So I'm going to be listening very closely to what Jay Jackson has to say. It is a big snowstorm coming, folks. Bundle up, and we will be right back. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is The More Money Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you are staying warm and you're bundled up when you go outside. But, go outside before the snow comes. Go outside and get some fresh air, because we may be having to be huddled up inside for a while as that snowstorm comes in. I think they're now suggesting 12 to 14 inches in much of the southeast and some of the northeast as well. So what better thing to do then on a cold day than to listen to The More Money Show? Incidentally, I just, I was talking earlier and I got a couple of texts from some of my friends who don't always agree with me. And they said, well, you're overestimating the Trump economy right now. I'm just going to give you a few quick statistics, and then I'm going to get to a couple of people on the line. The U.S. economy is growing at 5.4%, which is the highest growth in recent memory. The budget deficit is falling. Federal revenues are rising, even though we did the Trump tax cut. Prices are falling, and if we keep on the path that we've been on the last 3 months, we will be down below 2% inflation. So inflation is coming down very rapidly. Prices are not falling, but the rate of increase is falling, and that is very good news. We are seeing good numbers in terms of industrial production. So U.S. is making things again, and the jobs are out there. There are 7.5 million job openings in this country. So we've got to make sure the kids who are entering the workforce, or, folks who are looking for a second career, have the skills needed to fill the jobs that are necessary. So I'm feeling very, very good about this U.S. economy. We are, as Trump said, the world leader in growth right now, and other countries should do what we do, which is deregulate, cut taxes, promote our own energy sources, bring prices down. By the way, I paid $2.72 a gallon just a few days ago in Northern Virginia, and that is down for about $1 a gallon from what I was paying a year and a half ago. So things are headed definitely in the right direction. This is a blockbuster economy. But let's turn to some of our callers. We have Teddy from Yonkers. Teddy, what have you got for us?
Good afternoon, Mr. Moore. I like you as a person. You're intellectual. I just wish Mark Shields, may he rest in peace, was reincarnated. I would love for him to discuss things with you. But I know that...
Now, who's that? Mark, did you say Mark Shields?
Mark Shields, the former PBS...
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Teddy, thank you for calling. And that's a great point. I knew Mark Shields pretty well. He and I did not always agree, but he was a hell of a nice guy. I think he was a Notre Dame guy, by the way.
Yes, he was.
And we used to talk about, sports, and I'm so glad you brought this up, Teddy, because, that was an era, 20 years ago when you could have disagreements with people without being disagreeable. And he was a funny guy. We would disagree on stuff, but we'd then, go out and get a beer or something like that. Teddy, I don't think those times exist anymore. People are so angry. And so, how do you know Mark Shields?
Oh, I watched him on TV.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Yes. I just wish if Howard Baker and Steve Nunn and Sam Irvin were around.
Yes.
Ronald Reagan had big disagreements with Tip O'Neill, but afterwards they would go to a bar and they would have a drink. Okay? And
Teddy, yeah. No, you're making a very good point. Why can't we be more congenial to people? We can disagree. At Christmas and at Thanksgiving, I couldn't even bring up the name Donald Trump because some of my nieces hate Donald Trump. I'm like, come on, what is this? Let's disagree, but not be disagreeable. By the way, Mark Shields was very good friends with Bob Novak. And Bob Novak, of course, was a conservative free market guy, and Mark Shields was more a center left guy. But they always got along, and they'd always laugh. And it's a poisonous political atmosphere right now. And Teddy, I'm so glad you called in. Thank you so much. I think we have Vince calling in. Is Vince on? If not, while we wait for him, I want to mention a couple of things that are going on that I think are important politically. One is, this big... Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. You hear me?
Oh, sorry about that, Vince. Go ahead.
Hey, how are you? Yeah, so I have two kids in school, grad school. My son just became a doctor of PT, and he went to the Bill O'Reilly School up in Marist. And his interest rates are 8.2% on some loans and 7.6%. Yep. And he's telling me, and I remember when I went to school, they didn't start interest. They didn't start my payments till 9 months after I graduated. These kids on their freshman loan, sophomore, junior, senior, that started the interest already. So he had compounding interest being accrued, and he's in school 8 years now. The other thing is that, the legacy of a doctor, I'm a doctor, my wife's an of being, having your children become a doctor. My son actually is resenting. I paid $250 for him to go to school, and he's in debt $170. His payments are $1,800 a month. The thing is that a lot of his friends are saying to him, don't pay. And it's amazing because that's what's going to happen. And where's the skin in the game for these colleges? So where's the skin in the game? So these the only institution that they get paid forward before a kid even graduates. They get all their money. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Well, Vince, it's it's a great call. Thank you so much for calling in. Look, I think that what the universities are doing to our kids in terms of putting them so massively in debt. Kids are graduating with over $100,000 of debt. They're giving them diplomas that are barely worth the paper that they're printed on because they're in flim-flam degrees like sociology or ethnic studies or gender studies or this or that, the other thing, and there's not a lot of market for that. And why are these universities so expensive? I mean, if you go back to when I was in college, I'll just give an example. When I went to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, I paid $1,000 a semester. You know what it is now? $10,000 a semester. $10,000. Now prices haven't they've gone up a lot, but they haven't gone up tenfold since then. And I would argue that a lot of the universities and the education people are getting is worse today than it was back when I was in school. So how are we doing this to our kids, folks? Why are we allowing these universities to rip off our kids and rip off our families and put our young people into debt that they have? And by the way, the solution is not to have the government write off the debt, because that just encourages the universities to charge more and more and more. I've said this many times on the More Money Show, but all of the money that the government gives to universities and all the student loans is like a dog chasing its tail. The more money we try to subsidize universities, the more they charge. And so it's an escalating problem. And a lot of families are saying, no, I'm not going to send my kids to college anymore. If they went to get trained as an electrician or a carpenter or a nurse or something that has a need in this society, Bill Ford, who was the chairman of Ford Motor Company, said they have 15,000 mechanic jobs open, and they pay $100,000 to $125,000 a year. So come on, we can do a lot better than this, folks. This is the More Money Show, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I hope you're having a good weekend. I hope you're staying warm. I hope you're ready for Snowmageddon, which is coming all over the southeast and northeast of the country. I know we have affiliates throughout these great United States, but if you're on the East Coast, we're going to get hit hard. We're expecting about 12 or 13 inches of snow tonight in Washington, D.C. New York is supposed to face about 10 to 12 inches as well. So you might want to rush out to the grocery store and stock up. Although my wife and I went out to the grocery store this morning. Oh my God, it was completely packed. You could barely find any place to park in the parking lot. And, the aisles get depleted of food items and so on, because everybody goes up and stocks up at the same time. So you might want to just prepare for that. Who knows? Sometimes they predict these huge snowstorms. Sometimes they happen. Sometimes they don't, but be prepared and bundle up. And, it's not a bad time. It's kind of fun to get out in the snow. So when it comes. So, hope your, weekend is going well. My next guest is back by popular demand, Jay Jackson, who is a regular on the show, because every time I have him on, he is just, tells us a lot about how to make money, how to live longer, because we all want to live long and healthy and happy lives. And Jay Jackson, of course, is with Abacus Global Management. Jay, thanks for coming back on again.
Steve, great. Man, I always love being on here.
So thanks for being on. This, I think, your fourth or fifth performance. And thank you, by the way. He's also been a sponsor of our show, More Money. So I'm very pleased by that. And, thank you for that, Jay. So, by the way, Jay Jackson is one of the world's expert about how to live a longer life. And he is an expert on longevity. And I was going over my notes, Jay, from the last time we talked, and forgive me if you can correct me if I got this wrong, but you were talking about 4 or 5 things that really matter to extending your life. And one of them is nutrition. One of them is sleep, getting enough sleep at night. Another one is obviously exercise. And another one is just happiness, your state of mind. Just kind of give us a summary of those things. And maybe did I leave anything out in terms of how people we not only want to live longer lives, Jay, we want to live happier and healthier lives.
No, that's exactly right. And the last 3 years of your life matter most, right? Extending lifespan is important, but remaining healthy for as long as you can really have a huge impact, specifically related to costs. And you and I were talking about Dick Van Dyke the last time we were on the show. And he's one of the first centurions ever to be over 6 feet tall. And he was more than just being financially straight, but he lived his purpose-driven life, and he was working out in the gym at 99. Things like that, just being active and in control of your own dynamics was super important to him. And understanding emotionally was also very important for him too.
And he did talk about how, in fact, he didn't have enemies and he thought well of people, and what an amazing man he was. And so, tell us, about how Abacus, so you're an expert on longevity. How do you help people make money in their retirement accounts?
Sure. There's a couple ways that you can obviously help impact some of your health span and lifespan. One of which is making better financial decisions. I say this often. If, the number one fear in retirement is running out of money, wouldn't it make sense to understand how long you're going to be in retirement and understanding the assets that you own? People don't treat their life insurance policy like an asset more often than not. They just let it go.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, Jay, I don't treat you're saying I should, but I don't. I don't treat my life insurance policy like an asset. So how do I do that?
Yeah, it's like your home. And what you can do is just understand that you own that contract. And that means when you reach a certain age, 78 or older, or 75 and older, whatever the number may be, 70 and older, before just letting that policy go, you should understand that it has an actual asset value, just like your home. Abacus helps people solve for what that asset value is. And the key component to that is understanding how much longer you're going to be in that contract. It was like a few episodes ago, you and I talked about, do you defer Social Security or not? And many times we said, you can't make that educated decision without understanding what your underlying medical profile is to understand how long you might live to decide whether you're going to defer or not. And I'll touch on one super important thing here, Steve, that we haven't talked about yet.
So, wait, hold on, Jay, because you just said something important, with respect to deferring Social Security. And so how do you help someone like me determine, whether I should take the early retirement or should I? How do you do that? Right. How do you mix the health information, with these government programs?
And ultimately what happens is that you need to have an understanding of what your current medical environment is and your prior medical history. And that's exactly what I was going to tell you. It's amazing to me. If you can think about a list of everything you own, jewelry, art, homes, whatever it may be, you've got an appendix. You've got a list somewhere. You know what you don't have? I guarantee, I don't want to say I guarantee, but 99% of the population does not have a list of their current medical files. It's really easy. Keep them on a UBS or USB port that you can password protect. Quick stat. You know the number one leading cause of mortality in emergency rooms? Misdiagnosis. Not gunshot wounds, not knife. It's misdiagnosis. Because when you go to the emergency room, you assume they know what's wrong with you. They have no idea. Meaning they don't have your medical history. They don't have your files. I keep a USB port credit card in my wallet, so when I go, I hand it to them. Now I've given the physician updated information. The same thing happens with financial services. That is how we determine someone's life expectancy, is that we go and pull their updated medical files. It's like a 3-week process. Imagine if you already had that information. I could transact in a few days. And that's what's amazing to me is that we're not taking ownership of the most valuable asset that we have, which is ourselves. And you can do something so simple. Get all of your medical files, keep them at home in a drawer, put them on a USB drive, carry them with you, throw it in your purse or wallet or whatever you want to do. And if you go to the emergency room, you just hand them that, and you just literally increased your odds of surviving that event by tenfold, because you just gave people accurate information. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so how does this tie in with Abacus then? Why should someone, will you help people do that?
We do help them do that. But even if we don't, and this is something that everyone should do and own on themselves, regardless, right? Because if you have your medical history, I can easily underwrite for you. We have a program now that we're calling that we're calling Life Arc, and effectively what it is that your lifespan and life expectancy isn't a straight line, right? It's an arc of possibilities, and to better understand that arc, every person is unique and different. Your medical files is the book of that arc. It tells the story. And then how do you now implement that story? With those medical files, literally in a minute or two, I can give you all those probabilities. I can give you your life arc based upon your current trajectory. Now you can make changes to that trajectory.
Wow.
And that's what's
Wow.
beautiful. But
Sure.
you can't
Right.
do it without the basics. You got to
Right.
know where you are.
So it's almost like you're able
Right?
to
So many
outsmart
times,
the
right? We go on a weight loss program.
Yep.
And when we go to lose weight, don't we start by getting on a scale first?
Right.
That's what you got to
Good
do
point.
when you're understanding, where your medical history is. Know where you are
So it's
today so that
yeah.
you can make improvements. And that's the big message.
And then it's almost like this formula you have helps people sort of outsmart the insurance companies and outsmart the government because they have all their
That's right.
actuarials, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know
right.
your particular situation. Only you do.
They don't. That's right. The hospitals don't. The insurance companies
Right.
don't know your current situation. Only
Right.
you do. And you should have that information on file. You wouldn't apply for a mortgage without an updated credit report. Right. And so I just want your listeners to take away, you want to increase your lifespan. You got to start with the foundation of know where you are today, right? Get those medical files, own that, have that, be in control of that. You can password protect it, right? So, I know people get very fearful when they think about, oh boy, if somebody knows my medical history, they steal it. One of these things happens. Password protected. It's not that hard. And then you're in control and not someone else.
I'm
That's
talking
the
to Jay
secret to all this,
Jackson,
being
who
in
is, Jay Jackson is with Abacus Global Management. Now, Jay, how old, because we have, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s listening to this show. What age group, what age do people want to start coming to you for your financial advice?
People, they can start far earlier than this because 55-year-olds can have an impact when they're 80, right? So they can certainly start there. 55, 45, you need to start doing things to impact your 80s. And then when you're in your 65-year-old plus, like the idea of having your medical files, you should absolutely have those. Like there are some things you should do impactfully, but the premise is that if you're stepping towards retirement, you need to know this data so that you can better allocate for yourself, right? You need to understand what your lifespan data is. You should be reaching out to Abacus. If you have a life insurance policy, that's a great place to start. If you don't, we can talk to you about some of these other things because again, this Life Arc program is going to change everything. It's going to put all that data back in the hands of your listeners and people where they don't, insurance companies and others won't have that advantage. They'll have that because they're in control of their own destiny.
Mm-hmm. And so as I just was saying earlier on the show, I'm 65. I'm about to turn 66. And so obviously staying healthy is critically important to me as it is to everyone listening to this show that they want to stay healthy. Now we talked about some of these factors. So my nutrition is not good, Jay. I do eat way too much sugar and things like that. And then sleep, I probably don't get enough sleep. That's, what's the optimal for sleep? I don't know. And exercise, I'm pretty good on that, but what else? So what lifestyle changes can people make to extend their life?
I think the biggest thing you got to focus on is your visceral fat, which is around your tummy area, right? That's the most sensitive area, and that's the fats you don't see, right? That's around your deeper in your muscles and around your organs. The way to control your visceral fat is your caloric intake, right? And by the way, sugar isn't poison. Sugar is just a caloric intake, and it's super efficient, right? Quick example. If you eat a brownie versus, which is, say, 500 calories, how much broccoli do you need to get to 500 calories, right? So you just got to think about it. Do I eat broccoli or brownies, right? Brownies, you eat a plate. Broccoli, you can't eat a plate. So it's just a better way to do things. When you think about sleep should be 8 to 9 hours. Right? You should be really focused, but just get in bed and try. I know that's hard for people. A lot of people think 6 hours is all I can do. Well, then get in bed for an hour and relax and clear your mind because your brain is the most important muscle you have. It needs rest and will have a huge impact to the rest of the production on your body. And we all know what exercise can do, right? But I say this every time. If you're going to go for a walk, put a weight in your hand because it matters. Having grip strength, having muscle strength, those basic things really are super important.
I was listening to someone, by the way, could I hold you over for another segment, Jay? Because we got a break in a minute. Okay. So let's take a quick break. And when I get back, I want to ask you about how we, let's say if you're in your 70s, how you can increase your life expectancy and how you can
Sure.
live more healthy years. Cause that's what we all want to do. We all want to be happy and healthy, and we want to live, long and productive lives. So Jay Jackson is my guest. He is with Abacus Global Management, and we will be right back, folks.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to stay warm. Be sure to be prepared for Snowmageddon. We don't know how many inches of snow we're going to be getting over the weekend, but it could be a lot. In Washington, D.C., where I live, we're expecting 12 to 14 inches. That's a lot for Washington, D.C. It'll paralyze the city for a number of days. But be prepared and stay warm, and be sure to stock up, because when my wife and I went to the grocery store this morning, and boy, it was completely packed, and some of the shelves were already empty. So you might want to get out there and prepare, because we might be sheltered in for a few days. My guest is, for the final minutes of the show for this hour, is Jay Jackson, who is with Abacus Global Management. Jay, I cut you off before our break, but you were talking about getting 7 or 8 hours of sleep. What about Donald Trump? I mean, this is a guy who goes on 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah. Well, if you notice too, I do think he grabs a nap every now and again.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah, I'm certainly not picking on him. I just think that, what he does is manage his sleep differently than some others. Right. And would I highly recommend that? No, right? If he's doing 4 hours, he's probably after, from, let's just say that's midnight to 4 a.m. He's probably working for a few hours. He might grab a quick 20-minute, in between a meeting and then reset himself. And that also works, right? The way you have to think about it is that we are all different, right? When we take a 7 to 9 hour timetable, some people are going to be more efficient than others on the lower end of that. Some need more. The thing what's important when it comes to sleep, you got to listen to your body. What we forget, right, is that our brain is the most powerful muscle we have. Yet we don't give it a day off, right? Let's apply to exercise. If you were doing a leg day, you would probably not do a leg day back to back, right? You wouldn't do that same muscle group over again. But your brain, you don't have that option. The brain is every day you're functioning at the highest level that you can. So just think about how you're going to give it some time to recuperate. It's incredibly valuable. The brain runs everything. And that's when I talk about sleep, what I'm really referencing is that, hey, you may be super efficient at 6 hours. But hey, think about if you're tired in the afternoon, it's okay to grab a 20-minute nap and reset, right? Let your brain send you that signal and listen to it, right? Because it'll cut down on your cardiovascular issues. It'll cut down on your visceral fat issues, right? You really want to watch these things to have that type of life extension you're hopeful for. Because what you're really hopeful for is this. This is what it means to you. We have such a low savings rate in the United States for retirement because nobody knows what they're buying. I'm going to put it in real dollars and cents for you. If somebody is, let's say, in retirement with $1 million, right? They're 80 years old. My God, they have saved. They've got through. They still have $1 million left and they're 80. And let's say that their lifespan is projected to be 87. Now, here's where the math really comes in. If they're unhealthy, they're going to start to decline rapidly at 82 to 83. They still have 4 or 5 years left of incredibly expensive medical treatment. That treatment off your million may cost you 50% of your entire savings.
Right.
This happens all the time. Half of your entire savings is gone the last 3 to 5 years of your life. Wait a minute. Well, what if you're less healthy the last 2 years? That only impacts a 50% less than what your savings would have done. So instead of $500,000 going to that, it's only $250,000. You want to pay yourself $250,000?
Right.
Think about doing these things now. That's a real value. If you're worth $3 million, pay yourself $1 million. I have a secret to paying yourself $1 million. And it's literally cutting your medical expenses at the latter part of life. And that is what people don't equate, but it is dollar for dollar the last 3 to 5 years of your life.
And so this is something the Abacus can really help people with the financial management of those last years of life. Right.
Yeah, it's clearly an understanding of how to apply your lifespan to your financial plan, right? Starting with your life insurance, right? Just identifying the things that are right in front of you. Your life insurance has a value. It has an equity value. Let's figure out what that is. Add that now to your total current net worth because you don't need it for your beneficiaries. The next step is...
And by the way, the money that you... Yeah. Well, the money you don't spend, by the way, you can leave to your kids, obviously. So you're also robbing your kids of their inheritance if you are squandering those last few years of life.
Boy, people think, well, if I sell my policy, I'm going to take that away from my kids. I'm like, no, you're going to take this away from them anyways. And one quick note, you know who comes to us more often than not to sell the policy? Are the kids. Yeah. Because they're like, hey, mom or dad is faced with $15,000 a month in memory care. We don't have the funds to do it, nor do they. We had no idea this policy had value. The average size policies we're buying are nearly $1.5 million. These aren't people who are necessarily financially destitute. It's just becoming part of their estate plan.
Well, it just makes so much sense, Jay, and that's why we have you on so regularly, because you give us great advice about how we can live longer, healthier, and financially secure futures for us and our kids. That's Jay Jackson from Abacus Global Management. This is the More Money Show. We will be right back. We are live and in color.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. This is our second hour. Thank you so much for joining. We have a great second hour lined up. We're going to be talking to David Bahnsen, who's one of the financial gurus of our times, who's going to tell us about how you can make more money. And then coming right up is Senator Hagerty from Tennessee, who is one of the superstars in Congress. He's going to tell us what is going on with the budget, with the healthcare issues, he's very close to Donald Trump, by the way. He was the former ambassador to Japan. So I'm really so gratified that he is going to be coming on the show. We'll be getting to him in just a couple of minutes. I wanted to mention 2 or 3 things quickly before we get to Senator Hagerty. One is make sure you're getting the Unleash Prosperity hotline. I know most of you listen to the show, get it. And by the way, it's free. It costs nothing. All you have to do is just sign up for it. It's a daily email, 5 mornings a week that all the people at the White House are reading, all the people in Congress, the people at Fox News, the people in the media, the influencers are reading it. So you should read it too. I always say, if you want to be the smartest person in the room, get the hotline and just go to unleashprosperity.com, unleashprosperity.com, click on hotline, we will send you the hotline for free. It costs you nothing. And if you like it, we'll just continue to keep sending it to you. And if you don't, you can unsubscribe, but I think you'll really gain a lot from this. I wanted to mention one quick statistic before we take a break and bring on my friend Senator Hagerty, which is everybody was talking about these tax cuts. The Trump tax cuts were going to cause big deficits and that they were going to deplete the federal treasury of the revenue we need and all of these things. And in fact, if you look at the most recent statistics on what is happening with our deficit, and we're all concerned about our deficit and debt. Our national debt is a disgrace. We all know that. It's headed to $40 trillion. And these are gigantic numbers that are almost unfathomable. They are all a result of overspending in Washington, as you know. But the good news is that despite the fact that all the opponents of the Trump big beautiful bill said, "Oh, this is going to cause the debt to go through the roof, and it's going to cause the deficits to go higher and higher," that's not happening. That's not happening. And the reason it's not happening is because the tax cuts have improved the economy greatly. We're growing at almost 5.5% right now. So when you have more growth, you have more businesses, you have more people working, you have more profits. Guess what? The government gets a take of that, right? It takes a slice of that. You cannot balance the budget in a time of economic retreat, right? You only can increase your revenues when people are working and when people are profitable and businesses are profitable. And that's exactly what's happened. And so these numbers are unbelievable that just came out from the government scorekeeper, that the deficit is going to be down 15 to 20%. In the last 6 months, and revenues are up, even despite the tax cut, because this is the Laffer curve. If you cut tax rates, you get the economy moving again. That's the best way to bring the deficit down. And Trump has proved that again. I loved his speech in Davos, where he told us when the economy grows and people are working, guess what? You get less inflation, and you get lower deficit and less debt. It's just logical. The best way to pay off your debts, right, is to have more money. And that's exactly what's happening. The consumers and businesses have more money because of Trump's policies. I don't always agree with Trump. I agree with him about 80% of the time. I'm not a big fan of his tariffs. But by the way, tariff revenues are up too. And that's one of the reasons the deficit is down. So there's some good news for you. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will be on with my good friend, Senator Hagerty of the great state of Tennessee.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're staying warm. I hope that you are prepared for Snowmageddon, which is coming, especially if you're anywhere in that Washington, D.C. to New York corridor. So stay warm and get your shovels ready, because we're getting a lot of snow. My next guest, as I mentioned earlier, is a good friend and a guy I admire so greatly, Senator Bill Hagerty of the great state of Tennessee. Boy, I could talk for half an hour about his accomplishments in his life. He was a former ambassador to Japan. He's a senator from the great state of Tennessee, and has been a good friend of mine and good friend of my colleague Art Laffer, the great supply side economist. So, Senator Hagerty, thanks so much for joining. I know how busy you are on a weekend, and so thanks for coming on. Senator, are you there? Well, while we're waiting to get Senator Hagerty on, Senator, are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you, Steve. Can you hear me okay now?
Hi. Thank you so much for joining. We do hear you. And this is WABC in New York. I know you know my good friend John Katsimatidis, who owns this radio station.
Absolutely.
So thank you for coming on. I've got a lot to talk to you about. First of all, by the way, are you in Tennessee right now?
I am, Steve. We're getting pounded with snow. It's actually beautiful right now. I was just out in the snow, drove over to see my mother at 93 and a half years old.
Oh my God.
She's loving the beautiful snow, but I think we may have some ice coming, which will change the story significantly.
And you don't normally get a lot of snow in Tennessee, do you?
We since I was a kid, we usually have a couple of good snows every winter. The kids always have something to look forward to, and of course, we have sleds and snowmen down here too, but just not the same frequency as the folks up in the Northeast.
Yeah, we're supposed to get about 10 to 12 inches here in D.C. I don't know. Do you think that, you guys are supposed to come back on Monday and Tuesday? Are people going to be able to are your colleagues going to be able to get back to D.C.?
So the answer is no. And John Thune has already made the call that he's going to, instead of bringing us in on Monday, we're going to wait till Tuesday because many flights have already been canceled.
Oh, that's amazing.
I think that's just the reality of the situation right now. This is a serious storm that's hitting a large part of the country. So he's addressing it in the only responsible way that he can right now.
By the way, Senator, were you born in Tennessee? Where are you from originally?
Small town in Tennessee called Gallatin, Tennessee, named for that great statue in front of the Treasury Department, Albert Gallatin, but small town about 35 miles north of Nashville in Middle Tennessee.
Wow. And so you've seen huge growth, by the way. I mean, Tennessee, as you know, it's Tennessee, Texas, and Florida are the three big growth states. You're just seeing, and by the way, Tennessee, as I seem to recall, I think Arthur Laffer has told me you're a no income tax state.
Well, that's exactly right, because we had the benefit of listening to great economists like yourself and like Dr. Laffer. and going to an environment where you have a business-friendly regulatory climate, no income tax, it really has enabled us to compete like no other. And we run surpluses in our state. We have growth in our state. We have transitioned the economy from ag to manufacturing. When I was a kid, we had a small farm. We had a tobacco allotment, Steve. You remember that? We went from that cash crop to, an economy now that's dominated by manufacturing. We manufacture more automobiles here, particularly the automobiles of non-unionized companies. Tennessee has turned out to be a powerhouse. So it's taken a generation to do it, but smart policy has been the absolute critical factor for us to have the type of success we're enjoying. And by the way, being a right-to-work state, absolutely critical.
Huge. It's huge. No question about it. If you look at the right to work states, and by the way, unfortunately, most of our audience in New York and Connecticut and New Jersey are not right to work, and that costs the state a lot of jobs because employers oftentimes just won't locate in those places. So, Tennessee is here's the thing. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because, as I said, we have an audience that's mostly in the Northeast, and yet, Tennessee, your government spending per person is about half of what New York spends per person. And yet you're able to balance your budget. You run a surplus. You don't have an income tax. And, New York is almost the opposite. And New York is bleeding people. They've just elected a Democratic socialist as their mayor. It just frustrates me, Senator, that you look at the models that work, like Tennessee and Texas and Florida, and then you look at the models that don't work, many of the Northeast and of California with the highest taxes. Why is this so hard for politicians to understand?
It really is amazing that they keep doubling down on failed policies. The populations understand it. That's why they're voting with their feet. And people are moving increasingly to the three states that you just mentioned, Tennessee, Texas, Florida. They're coming here because of the economic opportunity that's presented to them, but they're also coming here because they love liberty and freedom. Those blue states, with sanctuary cities, they've created, just I don't want to use any bad language here, but they've created a very difficult situations in some of these cities that are inhospitable to safe living. They are inhospitable to businesses and enterprise. They're crime ridden. They are, just in some places, I think the criminals have just taken over and the politicians have just turned and looked the other way. And you keep asking yourself, why are they doing this? Why don't they just wake up to the policies that Tennessee, Texas, Florida have deployed, but they keep doubling down and they keep losing. And the only way they're able to address that, and it's sad to say, but Joe Biden was the poster child for this, is they basically create sanctuary cities in these blue states that are losing population, and they backfill with people that come into the country illegally. It's estimates in California, they have 5 to 7 congressional seats that they otherwise would not have, because those illegals get counted in the allocation of congressional seats and in the apportionment of electoral votes. That's what. And
incidentally, Senator, by the way, I'm talking to Senator Bill Hagerty, the great senator from the great state of Tennessee. A couple of things on this. One is that a lot of these blue states, we are all aware of what's going on in Minneapolis and the fraud that's going on. It happens in all the states, but especially in the blue states. We're seeing it in Minnesota. We're seeing it in California. We see it in New York, New Jersey. And here's my problem, Senator. The federal programs almost encourage these states to have fraud in the programs because they view the money that comes in as a quote stimulus to their economy, which just infuriates me that we're letting people steal billions and billions of dollars of taxpayer money, and the local officials, as in Minnesota, do nothing about it.
It's just shocking. And a taxpayer in Tennessee steps back and says, our funding, our tax dollars are going to these states that are irresponsibly allowing this sort of activity to happen. Why? So Tim Walz can brag about his great friends, the voting bloc that he's cultivating there with Somali refugees that are coming in. And I wouldn't say all of them, of course, but there's a large factor there that they just don't want to. They won't even take a look because they'll be accused of somehow, being a racist or what have you. We've seen some of the evidence of the threats that were leveled by some of the organizations that were going to be or should have been investigated, and the response was of Democrat politicians, let's just back off, let's keep everybody happy, even though there's tremendous fraud underway, billions of dollars of fraud, by the way.
Yes.
They were willing to do that. Again, we're subsidizing it across the nation, and it's a disgrace.
So that brings me to one of the major subjects I wanted to bring you on to talk about, Senator, which is the budget fight that is going on now. I saw President Trump the other day said we might have to have another one of these government shutdowns because, well, what's the state of affairs? What are you guys fighting about? Why is it so hard to come to an agreement on a budget?
Well, I think the last time this happened was they sort of backed into a rationale, and the rationale that they came up with after the fact was they wanted to highlight the runaway cost of health care and the fact that we needed greater subsidies to pay for government-run health care in America. They called it the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare. Right. It's anything but affordable, Steve. It's completely blown up in their faces. In 2014, when Obamacare was launched, a benchmark policy, a basic policy, cost $197 a month. Today, that cost is up to $711 a month. That's a 260% inflation, wow. More than double what private policy premiums have gone up.
And by the way, Senator, my wife and I just got our statement from our insurance company. Our premiums are going to go up, I think, 12 to 13% this year, and that's happening around the country. I thought they said they were going to make, as you just said, I don't see healthcare being more affordable. It's less affordable. It's almost like these guys lied to us. And incidentally, I was there, when we were debating Obamacare. We warned people, as most Republicans did, that this would cause an explosion of spending and debt. And that's exactly what's happened. And now we're trying to roll it back, and the Democrats continue to defend this program.
Yeah, not a single Republican voted for it, as you said, Steve. And they're that's the hill that they chose to fight on. Look, I think we all want to see this quote unaffordable care act get fixed, but it would include solutions like health savings accounts, like getting the money to the people rather to the insurance company, verifying the people that are on the program, and eliminate these $0 premium programs that have got tremendous fraud embedded in them. So those sort of common sense solutions are rejected wholesale by the Democrats. But Chuck Schumer was willing to shut the government down for 43 days last time. It did not work well for him. We now have a situation where the House has passed all 12 appropriations bills.
Yep.
When we get back to Senate, we've got 4 very important ones to move through. You think about defense. What our men and women of the military are being called upon to do around the world, we need to properly fund them. The Democrats are going to vote against that. Homeland security. After what Joe Biden did to our border and our nation's immigration policies, we need to support fully ICE so they can do their job again. We got labor, health, human services, and education. We got the final bill, transportation and housing. Those bills, the Democrats should move in favor with us. Will they do it? I don't know. But the Republicans are ready to pass this and not have another government shutdown. Chuck Schumer did the last shutdown, I think, in truth, Steve, and you watched this for a long time. I don't think it was about any policy issue. It was about a primary in New York State by AOC. Yep. It had to do with Chuck Schumer's poor poll ratings and trying to become the fighter again, because AOC felt emboldened the last time he didn't shut the government down and basically accused him of chickening out and caving to Trump. So he had to show his political manhood, if you will, and that resulted in a 43-day shutdown and a complete embarrassment, if you will, to the Democrat Party.
Senator, when I came to Washington some 30 years ago, there were a lot of moderate centrist Democrats, the Sam Nunns of the world and, people like that. And what frustrates me about politics today in Washington is it's going to take you 60 votes, right, to pass this this budget. So it requires 60, right?
And if we have to have unanimous consent because some of the rules, it requires everybody.
So my point is that why you deal with, your colleagues all the time. I just don't see that moderate, wing of the Democratic Party any longer. It's almost like they're almost all Elizabeth Warren and AOC types. And, that is frustrating to me because it used to be we could make negotiations. We could get these things settled in a way that benefited the country. But now everything seems to be politics.
It does seem that way. And I was explaining to a group of people earlier this week, they were asking me, about the partisan heat in Washington. And I said, it really is also partly to blame on the media, because the revenue models of the media actually work best when you've got, a battle going on. And Elizabeth Warren, for example, loves to feed that. AOC loves to feed that. There are things that happen on a bipartisan basis that frankly don't get any media coverage. For example, I fixed the permitting process for semiconductor fabrication plants in America.
Sure.
I got my colleagues on the Democrat side to agree with me. We passed it unanimously out of the Senate. No coverage at all. I could have cured cancer if it was on a bipartisan basis, no coverage. But if I went down and started a shouting match with one of my Democrat colleagues, we'd get wall-to-wall coverage, on the nightly news. It's just the perception of the partisanship there sometimes exceeds the reality.
So do you think that we're going to get how do you see this playing out? And are we going to get a government shutdown? Are we going to get a budget? How do you see it playing out?
I don't think so, because the same group that came across the aisle there, at the end of the day, we did stop the shutdown that Schumer started, only because there were 8 Democrats that were willing to cross the aisle and come across and work with us. Rand Paul voted with the Democrats, but 8 Democrats came over and voted with Republicans to reopen the government. Those same Democrat senators are still serving in the Senate. We stay in touch with them, and I think they have tried to be the voice of reason. They've had a tremendous amount of pressure, though. I mean, you think about the voice of reason in the last Congress when the filibuster was blocked by Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. They got run out of the Senate. It's very hard for them to stand up. You've got leaders like Jeanne Shaheen who are retiring. Each of those senators has to make their own decision, but there were enough of them there to work with us, and I suspect they'll continue to work with us. I don't know about the remainder of the Democrats, and we'll get any more of them, but my sense is it worked out so poorly for the Democrats following Schumer off the cliff on the last 43-day shutdown. There probably isn't a great appetite to do this again.
I hope you're right. So last subject I wanted to bring up with you, Senator Hagerty, is I think you're probably aware of these statistics because they're pretty new. But first of all, as you know, we're growing at almost 5.5% right now, which is just off the charts in terms of prosperity. And then, as you know, I mean, when you have more growth in the economy, guess what happens to tax revenues? They go up. And I don't know if you're aware of this because these numbers just came out just 2 days ago, but the budget deficit is falling. And even, you were one of the leaders on passing the big, beautiful bill. Guess what? The revenues are growing. And when the tax revenues are up 10% this year.
The same phenomena happened after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed after 2017, too. 2018 saw the same thing, an increase in tax revenues. It's not rocket science. It's what you and Dr. Laffer talk about all the time. But
that's right. It really works.
The blue chip economist, I just want to laugh, Steve. You were talking about where our economic growth actually came in this year, but you remember coming into 2025, I think the blue chip prediction was 1.8% GDP growth for 2025.
Right. Yep.
The Fed was like at 1.6%. And here we are at 5%.
Yeah. I mean, these are blind men throwing darts at a dartboard. Didn't even come close. And one last thing on the way out, you're very close to Donald Trump. I know you guys have a good friendship. I mean, the guy he's like a freak of nature, the way he works. He doesn't stop. I mean, what is your sort of impression of him so far in the second term?
I think he's done a phenomenal job. And if you think about it, he's had 4 years to really ponder and contemplate what he would do coming back. There was a lot of frustration, even before he started in his first term. The Russiagate hoax had already been unpacked on him. The difficulties of the resistance movement that were undertaken. They tried to block. They tried to block appointments, that sort of thing. Now he's had a lot more time to think about it. And if you just look at the raft of executive orders that were unpacked as soon as he got to Washington this time, you could see a very deliberate focus on coming in. And he realizes he's got 4 years, and he's going to go through, and get the hard stuff done early, and make certain that he's got time to implement it going forward. So it's been in the media. The media are loving it, I would think, because it's been great for their revenue, all the pearl clutching that's going on. but he's actually come in, and it took just a matter of days, if not weeks, to secure our border. Joe Biden had been saying you needed legislation. No, you just needed a new president. And
yeah, but
he's got the border.
By the way, what do you
coming down? A lot of good things.
Well, last question. I just filled up my tank in Virginia, and Virginia and Tennessee are bordering states, but I paid $2.72 a gallon. What are you guys paying in Tennessee for gasoline these days?
A little bit less than that. It's about $2.38, $2.42. Here in Middle Tennessee, you get to some other areas over closer to Memphis, is a little bit less than that. So
wow.
Our tax structure is a little bit different. The cost should be about the same. The Colonial Pipeline would be the same cost source, but really the difference gets to be taxes. You go to California, where my wife is from. Oh my gosh,
it's like $4 a gallon.
Yeah. It's all taxes.
Well, Senator, thank you so much I know how busy you are, and I know you don't get a lot of time off, so it's very nice of you to take a little time off on your one day off of the week on a Saturday and come on the show. Please come on again, and you are doing an amazing job. We just need to get 100 people in the Senate who think like you do, and we'd be
you're doing a great job too, Steve. We all rely on you and very much appreciate your influence. I know the president does. Certainly I do, and many of my colleagues in the Senate. We read you every day and appreciate you.
Okay, well,
thanks so much for having me.
Stay warm and get your shovel ready, right? Okay. Thank you, Senator.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. We are the More Money Show. I'm economist Steve Moore. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you're staying warm. I hope you got your shovels ready, because snow is coming throughout the southeast and the northeast, and we could get as much as 12 to 18 inches tonight. So I hope you are ready for Snowmageddon. Although sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes they predict these huge snowstorms and they don't come in. I was just talking to Senator Hagerty in Tennessee. He's saying they've already gotten a lot of snow, and it looks like that storm is coming our way. So be ready for it, and make sure you're prepared. You got food in the pantry, et cetera, because we could be a couple of days of digging out. My next guest, and by the way, at the end, in the final minutes of this hour, we will be taking some of your calls. I want to ask you about what you think about what Bill Hagerty was talking about this budget situation. Do you want to see another government shutdown? Are you disgusted with what Congress is doing? Are you disgusted with the amount of debt and deficits we're running? I am. The good news that these deficits are coming down, but there's no better financial expert to talk to and finance expert than my good friend David Bahnsen. You all know David. He's been on my show many, many times on More Money, but he also, you know him from Fox News. You know him from National Review. You know him because of his excellent books. Two of the ones that I like the most are Full Time, which it's called Full Time, Work and the Meaning of Life. And I think I love that book. And the other one, of course, is There's No Free Lunch, which is one of my favorites because it just has all these little pearls of wisdom. So, David, thanks so much for joining.
Well, Steve, good to be back with you.
So a lot I have to talk to you today about, David, starting with what did you think of Trump in Davos? I liked his speech a lot. It was a little bit triumphalist. He took a couple of victory laps, but my goodness, the U.S. economy is booming right now, according to almost every statistic. What did you think of Trump's performance in Davos?
Well, I thought that there were certain things said in his speech that were long overdue to Europe, about Europe, and it kind of made it harder for me because the things I wish he hadn't said, I think, took away from that. And so, this is how I am all the time about things with the president is there's just the stuff I love and then there's the stuff I don't love, and they're all got to take all of it together.
Right. Okay, so let's start with what you like. Let's get to both of those. Let's start with what you liked, and then we'll get into what you didn't like. So what were some of the highlights?
Well, I think that the notion that Europe has not invested in a culture of growth, that Europe has let itself fall behind. I don't think the president necessarily fully expressed this, but you and I would express that a lot of that is its growing move towards secularism, towards statism, towards a democratic socialism that has really left it a very moribund and unimpressive economic contributor for decades. And I think the president is perfectly right to call that out.
By the way, can I just interrupt here for 1 second? And, this is a statistic I use all the time now, but it really underscores what you were just saying, David, which is, that one of our poorest states in the country today is Arkansas, and Arkansas, the average resident of Arkansas now has a higher income than the average resident of Germany, which is just amazing. Germany has fallen so dramatically in the last decade.
Well, and there's these other stats too. I'm sure you've seen about the number of, top performing technology companies over the last 50 years that have come from Europe. Like out of the top 50 in the world, I think 2 of them have been European or something. And so
Incredible.
They just have not been competitive. And that's because of mistakes that they walked into culturally and economically.
Yep. And so how about, what else did you like? I mean, one thing I liked was when he talked about how, about the Phillips, he didn't say the Phillips curve, but this Phillips curve idea is, prominent in economics that, if you have too much growth, you're going to get too much inflation. And I liked the fact that Trump said, wait a minute, growth doesn't cause inflation. If you have growth, you increase the supply of goods and services. And if you increase the supply of goods and services, the prices go down, not up. But there were little pearls of wisdom in that speech like that.
Well, that's right. He didn't exactly call it out that way, but that's the implication. And I do think that anything that is tearing down the orthodoxies of the academy for the last 50 years that imply growth is inherently inflationary needs to be done. Now, that needs to be done in America, too. And I would argue that sometimes it needs to be done even within certain policies that the president proposes. But he called that out well. And Europe, of course, has been littered with that for a long time. And so the Phillips curve needs to be left on the ash heap of history where I thought the 1970s left it.
Should have been. Okay, so tell me about, what is your position on Greenland and some of the things that maybe that Trump said that made you uncomfortable?
Yeah, I just look at a high level. I don't agree with any form of threats to imply that we are going to take Greenland. He did say we won't do it by force. That was a little different than certain things he implied before. He had said over the weekend, we're going to put tariffs on countries that even don't like us doing this. And so then what happens, Steve, is that you get a lot of the president's supporters that will say, I'm misunderstanding it, that it's all art of the deal negotiation stuff. And I no longer accept that default line on everything. I think that I am just old fashioned. I think what we say and how we say it matters. We have a strategic interest there. And I think that there were parts of his speech I really liked where he made the case for whether it's mineral rights, whether it's Golden Dome, whether it's hemispheric security. But I want to see that conversation. That's a serious conversation, and it should be done seriously. And so that's where I've just been a little bothered by some of the tactics.
So where are you now, David Bahnsen, on the U.S. economy? I mentioned the fact that the growth numbers that have been coming in the last few weeks have been really, really positive. The inflation numbers are not quite where we want them to be yet, David, but they have been coming down. So are you bullish now? Are you generally feeling good about the U.S. economy? I know you're not a tariff guy. I'm not a tariff guy. I do buy into some of Trump's arguments that he's used these tariffs as a bargaining chip, which, for the most part has been pretty good. But I think he's going to lose in the Supreme Court, by the way, David, and that may require Trump to return a lot of this revenue. I know there's a lot there, but what's the current state of affairs?
Well, I have a really big theme this year that it's very agnostic about where the economy may go, which is totally different than saying things are very bad, the labor market's falling apart, the tariffs are going to lead to everything tanking. It is not a bearish view, but I will confess that I don't quite see the data as assuredly optimistic as maybe you or our friend Larry Kudlow do.
Right.
First of all, the last quarter GDP is certainly true that, the annualized number got way up there. But then when you apply it to the whole year, we're going to end up at maybe 2%, 2.1% real GDP growth, which is much less than you had the year before. And so the reality is that I want to see it trending in the right direction. And I think that there's stuff in the Big Beautiful Bill Act that is supply side and pro-growth. And I know the CBO scored it at $130 billion of additional business investment, which is stimulus. Okay, it's a good thing. I think it's $200 billion. I think they're underestimating it. And I believe that when you tax less of business investment, you get more business investment. So that is the bullish side I'm making, is that is a $200 billion annual increase to the economy. But my problem is, Steve, it comes with a $300 billion cost to the corporate economy in the form of tariffs. And I don't have the arrogance to say that I know how that will play out. It's a push-pull between two things. And so, the inflation rate at the end of the year was the same as it was the last few months of 2024. The GDP was less than it was. That doesn't mean we're not going to trend better. But unfortunately, I think back to the first term, and I know that I'm talking to someone who was a big part of this stuff in the first term. What you and Art and Larry and a lot of the people that were there in Trump 1.0 were doing, look, you get a bigger benefit when you drop the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%.
Yes,
that's
huge.
Low-hanging fruit, and it moved the needle a lot. But we don't have anything like that this time. And so I'm just having a hard time getting as optimistic, but I'm not pessimistic. I'm agnostic.
Right. Okay. So you raise a good point. There's no question. You and I completely agree that the low hanging fruit when Trump came in, which is amazing. We didn't do this long before Trump came in, was, we had essentially the highest corporate tax rate in the world. And we brought it down to about the average. And that had a huge impact in bringing investment to the United States. What would you say is the low hanging fruit now? In other words, if Donald Trump called you and said, hey, I need your advice, what do we do? What are the 2 or 3 things you would recommend Trump do, to continue to, see the records to help the stock market, to help the economy, to help workers?
Number one, I would announce that any tariff that has been implemented, which is not out of protecting critical infrastructure and national security, is being repealed. He did it in the fourth quarter when he saw that coffee and bananas and sugar, produce items, so he knows, he's pragmatic. He's smart. You know that. Yeah, he knew it wasn't working and he undid it. But look, the steel and aluminum and lumber, it's hurting housing.
Yeah, it did.
And so those things I would want to see repealed. And then you say, what can you do? I would pass a deal that says no law gets passed without 2 laws going away. Like put some meat on the bone around deregulation, because he's done it with energy and he's done it with finance, and it's been lovely. Let's do it with everything. Let's do it not just in banking and energy. Let's do it across the whole economy.
And then give me one more.
Then I'm sorry to paraphrase you, but I'll tell you, as my favorite Wall Street Journal op-ed I've read in a long time, I would absolutely index in capital gains to inflation, and not just for primary residents. I would do it for stocks. I would do it for businesses. I'd do it for any asset sold at a gain where you pay capital gain tax. Index the darn gain to inflation, so people are only paying taxes on real gains, not nominal gains.
Well, I love that third one. And by the way, we debated back and forth about whether we should recommend we do it for everything or for housing. Of course, you and I agree that it would be, look, it's just not only is it bad economics, but it's not fair to tax people on inflationary gains. And so thank you for mentioning that. So now we are, David Bahnsen, with record highs in the NASDAQ, in the S&P 500, and in the Dow. We're knocking on the door of Dow 50,000. We've lived through the greatest 40-year bull market in the history of the world. Can it continue?
Well, it sure can. I mean, the reason that stocks always can continue is that they've gone up through really good presidents and they've gone up through really bad presidents, because it's the one thing that gets to be a little more removed from the interventionist hand of government is, corporate profit making, wage growth, innovation. The stuff that creates prosperity is in the private sector, and the stock market's largely capturing that. The big bullish argument, even though the S&P is very expensive at 22 or 23 times earnings, is that it's rare in history, Steve, to have double-digit profit growth. And let's say we do get decent economic growth this year, and the Fed is reducing rates. All of those things put together are supposed to be a good backdrop for stocks. The problem has been that the Mag 7, the AI, the tech stuff has become such a huge overweight, and I'm quite convinced those things are going to underperform this year, that it may lead to a good year in stocks, but not as good a year for the S&P 500, for the broad index. And we're seeing a lot of it already, not a correction, a rotation, where energy is doing better.
Sorry to interrupt you. We have to could I hold you over for one more segment? This is a fascinating conversation. If I could abuse your time for about 10 more minutes, because what I'd like to ask you about is, you've done so much work on the value and virtue of work. There's some new statistics that are somewhat troubling on that. So could you hold over?
Yeah, I'll stay with you. You got it.
Okay. So folks, this is the More Money Show. That's David Bahnsen, one of the top financial experts in the country. And we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for joining on a Saturday afternoon. We're live and in color. And so thank you by the way, almost every other station has boring infomercials and so on. On WABC, we give you live programming all the way. It's a pretty amazing thing. 3 hours of Larry Kudlow from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and then you get the More Money Show from 1 to 3. That's quite a lineup. So I've been talking to David Bahnsen, who is really one of the best financial advisors out there in terms of telling us what's happening with the market, what's happening with the economy. You see him all the time on Fox Business News, Fox News. You read him all the time at National Review. And what is the name of your company, David? David?
Oh, the Bahnsen Group, and people can find everything, including the investment writing and market commentary, at dividendcafe.com. Dividendcafe.com.
So that's a great site to go to. You wrote a book about the just looking this up right now because I had it in front of me, and then your book about work. What's it called again? What's the title?
Full-time work and the meaning of life. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I love that book, and I love it because I agree with almost everything in it. And I'm very concerned, David. I don't know if you've seen some of these latest statistics about the Gen Zs, but one of the statistics is that for males between the ages of about 18 and 30, the male participation rate in the labor force has declined, which I find troubling. I think you probably do too. And then a second one that's related to this is that there was just recently a poll done of Gen Z folks, but I think the age of the respondents was 20 to 30 years old or so, and they were saying that a common attitude among these young people was, it doesn't really matter how hard you work, because you just can't get ahead and the system's rigged against you and that kind of thing, which I think is a very subversive idea of how the American economy works. Those two things you write a lot about in your book, and I wonder just what do you have to say about both of those things?
Well, I mean, look, it's unfortunately not just 18 to 30, but even into 30s and 40s, there is a decline for males in the labor participation, and it's become a cultural phenomenon for some time. And it bothers me a great deal. And people think because you and I are economists that that's the way we're talking here. You know, I'm bothered on a human level. I mean, that's
me too.
the point I want the book to communicate that there's an incredible amount of dignity, of satisfaction in life that comes from productivity and active, useful endeavor. And that's what our work ought to be. And then seeing people deprived of that bothers me a great deal. And seeing them deprive themselves of it bothers me even more. This narrative, though, that people are being deprived of the ability to have a good life, I think you have to kind of tackle it from both sides. I am a huge critic of what has happened about housing affordability. I think there's a combination of policy errors that have really contributed to the astronomical entry level of houses, and it bothers me a great deal. I also believe that we have more 25 and 30 and 35-year-olds that are making a great living and finding a rewarding career than we've ever had. And so I don't like anything that is presented fatalistically. I want policy to get right so that the greatest amount of people can find human flourishing. But I also don't want anybody to give up, because sometimes to make it, you have to overcome bad policy.
So your book on work is full-time is really important because you said it very well. There is dignity in work. People who work are happier than people who don't work, as you know. I mean, you show this in your book. So it's not just an economic issue. It's for your mental health, that everybody needs to feel like they have a reason to be and are productive and contributors.
Yes, and as a man of faith, I not only believe that, but I believe it because I actually do think that's the way God made the world. I think that we were made to work and be productive, and that most stimulates the things about us that make us human. That we're not just passive creatures. We have agency. Mm-hmm. We have active things we can do to contribute and create and innovate and everyone is going to do that a different way to their own taste and abilities and skills and interests. And so I like the fact that in a market economy, people have a very big menu they can order from in terms of what they want to do with their lives. But I don't accept the Keynesian notion that we're all here just to consume and that the things that bring us happiness in our life are what we can go shop for. I think that we're fundamental. I'm a supply sider. I think that we find happiness when we build the supply side of the economy by producing goods and services that meet the needs of humanity. And sometimes our dreams can come true from that. And sometimes we can engage in really meaningful relationships with people. But the point being, we're contributing, we're taking agency, and that's the key here.
So the last thing I wanted to ask you about, David Bahnsen, is obviously the robotics AI age is upon us. I think it's coming a lot faster and in a lot in a change mode that I think a lot of Americans may not be entirely prepared for. I have told my listeners, and I've told you this, David, that I'm on the board of a company called Lightspeed, and we build houses with robots. And you're seeing in California now many of the Uber and Lyft cars are now automated cars, so you don't have people driving them. The cars drive themselves. We're probably not going to have many trucking drivers left 10 years from now, et cetera. So this is going to be one of the most dramatic productivity improvements in history, but people do worry about, well, what will we do? What will workers do if robots are doing all this work for us? So what is your response to all of that?
Yeah, Steve, I mentioned dividendcafe.com a moment ago, and a few months ago, I wrote a very exhaustive piece on this because I have really strong opinions. I do think that whether it's AI or robotics or various elements of digital technology, there not only will be, but there already has been a fair amount of things that, have been able to replace and make more efficient some of these particular positions. I'm not totally sure truck drivers are going to be entirely obsolete because of pointed delivery and what happens when you actually get to Fifth Avenue in Midtown traffic, But yeah, trucks going across the 10 freeway, from coast to coast, there's a lot of changes coming. But then I think to the fact that the digital revolution started over 50 years ago and we created 58 million net new jobs. And we don't have typewriter salesmen anymore. And we do, the services economy really did pass the goods economy in a lot of ways. And that's what the American worker wanted. They wanted a higher quality of life, and it was less physically laborious and more profitable and more consistent. The Industrial Revolution is very telling as well, that we moved from an agricultural economy to a more industrial economy, and we created 20 million net new jobs with a lot less population base then than we have now. So there's going to be people, Steve, that it hurts. There's going to be people that have to retrain, and that's where guys like you and I think, have an important moral duty because we don't ever stop praising the free enterprise system. Well, if you want to have more options for workers that get displaced by AI, you better be an advocate of a market economy, because that's what creates the dynamism and the mobility for people to be able to find something different when there are periods of transformation.
Well put. Well, David, I'll pay you overtime because I promised you I'd have you on for 10, and you educated us for about 20 minutes. So thank you so much. I'll buy the next drink when we get together. But that's David Bahnsen, one of the world's sort of experts on finance and the economy and the stock market. Appreciate you coming on, David. This has been a fun 2 hours, getting ready for the big snowstorm coming in, folks. Bundle up, make sure you're prepared. Get the shovels ready, get the salt ready. And by the way, this is a time when a lot of accidents happen. People, have back problems because they go out and try to shovel the heavy snow, and the emergency rooms are filled with people who have heart attacks or back spasms and so on. So be careful out there. But it's going to be a winter wonderland. It's going to be beautiful out there after the snow comes down. So it looks like most of Washington and New York will be shut down on Monday if the snow comes in as expected. But meanwhile, we have WABC to listen to, and it never shuts down. So appreciate so much you all joining. We'll be back, same bat time, same bat channel next week. Stay warm, stay safe. God love America, and I'll talk to you next week. This has been the More Money Show.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.